George Washington stood before his officers in a dimly lit room, the weight of their expectations heavy on his shoulders. The Newburgh conspiracy had reached its peak. Many officers, frustrated with Congress, whispered about making Washington king. He sighed, retrieving a pair of spectacles from his pocket. Few had ever seen him wear them. "Gentlemen," he said, his voice steady but emotional, "I have grown not only grey, but almost blind in the service of my country." The room fell silent. The officers, touched by his humility, abandoned the idea of monarchy. Washington's refusal to seize power solidified his legacy, ensuring democracy would prevail in the newborn nation. The sun cast long shadows across the Potomac as Washington rode through his estate, reflecting on his final days. Though retired from public life, he could never escape duty. One evening, a messenger arrived bearing urgent news. Tensions with France were escalating, and President Adams sought his guidance. "General, the country may need you again," the young man implored. Washington sighed. He had hoped his legacy would be one of peaceful retirement, not perpetual leadership. "If my country calls," he replied, "I will answer. But let us hope it does not come to that." Though he never returned to battle, Washington's steady influence remained. Even in death, his will dictated his greatest statement, freeing all of his enslaved people, a symbolic act acknowledging the contradictions he had lived with. Thomas Jefferson, the secret musician and inventor. Thomas Jefferson sat in Monticello's study, his fingers gliding over the strings of his beloved violin. Music was his refuge, his escape from the chaos of politics. Across the room, his latest invention, a rotating bookstand, held 5 open books, allowing him to read multiple texts at once. He adjusted a pulley on the great clock he had designed, which marked time inside his home and outside on the facade. His mind never rested. When he wasn't drafting revolutionary documents, he was creating new ways to simplify life. Even the dumbwaiter he invented made Monticello's kitchen operate more efficiently. "I am more a scientist than a politician," he often mused, a statement that reflected his restless curiosity. At Monticello, Jefferson sat by candlelight, writing letters that would shape the future. Among them was a letter to John Adams. After years of political rivalry and silence, the two former presidents had reconciled, engaging in an exchange of wisdom and reflection. "We must not be enemies, but friends," he had once written. Now, nearing the end of his days, he found solace in their correspondence. On July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson took his last breath. Unbeknownst to him, Adams would pass just hours later, his final words being, "Thomas Jefferson survives. Benjamin Franklin, the prankster statesman." Benjamin Franklin adjusted his bifocals as he studied a lightning rod he had installed atop his Philadelphia home. His mind was always alight with ideas, whether they concerned science, politics, or human nature. One evening at a London salon, he found himself engaged in a fierce debate about human intelligence. "Gentlemen," Franklin said, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips, "imagine a society where intellect is rewarded above all else." The room fell silent, hanging on his words. He went on to describe a public institution that could foster learning for all, regardless of status. Years later, this vision materialized into the University of Pennsylvania. From his diplomatic negotiations in France to his electrical experiments, Franklin's life was a testament to curiosity and wit. He was, in many ways, the embodiment of the American dream, rising from humble beginnings to shape a nation. Franklin, ever the experimenter, spent his final years refining his inventions and philosophies. In his last public act, he petitioned Congress to abolish slavery, a cause he had come to embrace in his later years. His eloquence was undeniable, but the nation was not yet ready to listen. "Justice will prevail," he wrote in one of his final essays. "If not in my time, then in another." Even in death, Franklin's influence endured. His ideas, his wit, and his unrelenting curiosity shaped not just America, but the world. He was a man who had lived by his own words. "Well done is better than well said." Thus concludes the unknown stories of the Founding Fathers. Their legacies remain, not just in monuments or textbooks, but in the very fabric of the nation they built, flawed, yet ever striving toward a greater ideal.